So there I was in 2003, as you can see me in the picture, in the middle of my workshop on teaching English through drama in education. And as you can see, I was full of energy and enthusiasm and passion for my subject. I'm sorry, don't notice the guy standing next to me. I know he looks very skeptical about all this. But what I want you to do is look at the young man standing behind him. Can you see that? I think he is my evidence that all that work and dedication to my job were worthwhile. As you can see, he is still rehearsing his lines for his English improvisation with his own group. And that's what kept me going, witnessing the students to embrace English, not as a subject which is compulsory and which is done for an exam, but something as a tool that helps them to connect with the global community, with people from various races, nations, cultures, or genders. So that ability to witness, to see my students progress emotionally, cognitively, socially, helped me to stay in my profession for over a quarter of a century. How old I sound in this moment. So I came here to argue for my profession. I still believe that teaching is a unique profession. I would say that its uniqueness is in its familiarity to all of us. We've all been involved in various acts of teaching, be it parents, friends, siblings, or just colleagues in our workplace. No wonder there are so many names for our profession. We are teachers, lecturers, mentors, supervisors, coaches, trainers, facilitators, name it. But mostly we are inspirational leaders. I also come to say that teaching is a unique profession from the aspect that what is granted in it, for it. For example, in no other profession than in teaching, you're expected to stand confidently in front of a group of complete strangers and learn their names in no time. In no other profession than in teaching, you are expected to capture their attention within the first 3 minutes of the lesson and keep them engaged with in the activities which they don't consider very interesting at that time of their lives. In no other profession, you are expected to raise their confidence levels while your confidence hasn't grown yet. And in no other profession, you are asked to measure promptly, reliably, objectively, and accurately a phenomenon so elusive as learning is. And I must say that those challenges don't go away with the years of experience, and that I can relive those anxieties with every new group or semester or a course. So you may ask me, why did you choose this profession? What helped you to stay in this profession despite its insecurities and anxieties? And I would say, well, teaching more than any other job has managed to bring such a strong sense of self-fulfillment and self-worth. When I witness those precious moments of making connections, which I call learning, though light bulb moments when something new is learned, acknowledged, or appreciated. So, in order to stay in this profession and seeing learning through those making connections, I created a kind of a personal theory of good teaching, which I'm going to share with you, and I call it 5 Commandments of Good Teaching. So the first commandment I would like to say is called Know Thyself. As you can see in this lovely little picture of my little nephew, who is doing what you have to do as a teacher, as the first thing, is trying to connect with your self-image. While he is connected with his mirror image and doesn't care about it at that time of his life, we do. It's that desire that we connect to our self-image, to our self, whatever this concept means in our mind. because we have a desire to go and reach that ideal self, that desire to be a good teacher and bring some goodness and some stability into this unstable and insecure world. But as a teacher, I must tell you that I feel this desire to reach that ideal self can be quite self-destructive. I remember so many hours of preparing for the lessons, and then at the end, it was all wrong. And it took me a while to get over it. And I must say, it still hurts when I see my students disengaged or disinterested. And I find it very difficult to forgive myself for the mistakes I make. But on the other hand, over the years, I think I have grown quite comfortable with my public image, because I know it's only just one part of my personality. That there are still, what Mr. Eason says so poetically, untapped reservoirs of my creativity, some dreamer spots that help me to grow in my role. I believe in this because I treasure the moments when there is a sudden silence in my classroom, when a story takes its place in the imagination of my students. I remember it was in 1996 when I was teaching in a small suburban school in Columbus, Ohio. And I was teaching English to a small group of refugee children. And in order to help them to understand, I was doing storytelling. So one day, I was telling a story about trolls. And in order to help them to visualize the characters, I brought some props. So I brought a pair of black gloves, I brought knitting needles, and I remember I brought a hat. And there I was telling the story, when suddenly I noticed that little Nigerian girl who would never sit in the classroom, she had a special rubber ball so she could jump around. There she was, sitting next to me and looking at those old black gloves with absolute fascination. And I could see, yes, this is that precious moment when I made the connection with that fantastic imaginative world of hers. This is the moment when I, as a teacher, tapped in those reservoirs of my creativity, where my dreamer spots could come to light. So thank you, Mr. Eason, for such a poetry. The second commandment, I would say, to become a good teacher is know thy learners, or know thy students. At the beginning of every course, I ask myself, who are my learners? What kind of life and educational experiences are they bringing into my class? How will they work with me? And how will they work with each other? How can I meet their needs? I still believe that it's very, very important in the lesson that you value moments when your students tell you something about their lives, when they reveal their dreams and aspirations, because that's your moment. That's when you can take those and link them to your lesson, to discussions, to your course. I believe that knowing my learners, I can aspire them to become independent learners. I remember coming here, I've brought a lot of assumptions and biases with myself as a European teacher. Knowing my learners means that I had to learn that not all my learners can read and write in their native language. I had to learn that not all of them have had a chance to have any primary education. Or I had to learn that not all of them take it as a norm that men and women can work and study together. But interestingly, I've learned that the correct use of apostrophe is more of a problem to native speakers of English than non-native. So I'm not surprised that some education secretaries made it there as their political mission. But I also learned to be fascinated by misconceptions and confusions of my students. So I know now, according to my students, that the 5th of November is a special day here in England. You, the English, are absolutely crazy about fireworks. So you decided that you dedicate one day in the year to the display so you can enjoy them to your heart's content. The third commandment is let your students know each other. It seems obvious, but you know how difficult to get you collaborate with each other. It's sometimes difficult to find out why students don't want to work together. But I believe if they know each other, that might help them to overcome those barriers. But I also use a very strong argument that we as human beings don't choose who our team makers will be or who our bosses are going to be. We just need to work together. Letting my learners know each other means that I don't have to be the only person who supports them, guides them, or judges their learning. As a good teacher, I should plan in my lessons special occasions that empower students to become leaders of their own learning. I remember a lesson in English when I was supposed to teach about English adjectives, and I thought, how am I going to do it? So I came with an idea of bringing music. So I brought about 3 or 4 CDs to my classroom. But in fact, because I thought, well, we'll have a good discussion. But after about 2 songs, suddenly my students started to jump out of their seats, their mobile phones in their hands, and were saying, Daniela, Daniela, listen to my music. Oh, look at my music. And then I realized, oh yes, music. That's a fantastic connection. It's a connection between and my students, but also among my students, among my own students. So that was their lesson. And they could present their own music, explain why they like the music and why they value the music. So I think in that moment I tapped to the reservoirs of my students' imagination, creativity, and experience, because that gives them that power of being proud of themselves. The 4th commandment is the commandment about being able to be open to new ideas. I hope you like my picture. It's the town I come from. When I show it to my students, they say, oh, what did you do? Why did you come to Bolton, Daniela? Well, ask my husband. These English people are terrible. So be open to ideas is all about acknowledging that all those years which I observed other teachers teaching have made a considerable impact on my own teaching, on my own actions, on my own judgments when I am in the classroom. And in fact, it is an idea that we all think what is good teaching or bad teaching, even before we are doing our teacher training course. I hope I'm right. So, be open to new ideas means that I have to challenge my own convictions, what it means to be a good teacher, just because these strategies work for me as a student. Being open to new ideas also means that I have to be confident enough to take risks and trial new approaches. I was in fact brought up in then communist Czechoslovakia. And the model I saw in front of me was a very authoritarian teacher. So there were no occasions for any discussions and forget freedom of speech. I was in fact always in trouble with teachers. So when I became a teacher, you can imagine how unhappy I was with that public display of my personality, because I didn't agree with that. So I tapped into my passion, into the theories of drama and education, theatre and literature, and brought those on stage into my classrooms and then nationally. But when I came here to the UK 12 years ago, to my horror, I found out that I am not a qualified teacher anymore. That my subject, English as a foreign language, doesn't exist outside the private sphere. And that my love for Shakespeare can be considered as an elitist privilege. though I come from a very working class family. I couldn't understand that. But to be open to new ideas meant that I learned how to teach different subjects. So I started to support adults with literacy. I started to help adults to learn how to study and become independent learners. I also help students to identify some aspects of dyslexia when no one in my institution could do that for me. So to be open to new ideas means that you grab those challenges and you take leaps into darkness, because you know that at the end, that's what makes you feel alive and curious in your job. And my final commandment is the commandment about embracing the community of other professionals. As you can see, I don't look very lonely there, but I would say that as a teacher, there are moments in your life when you might feel very lonely, especially if you're a new teacher coming to a very busy college environment, or if you're teaching in different community centers around the town and then there's no one else except you. I remember mornings when I was frozen to death waiting for a security guard or a cleaner to open the building for me. But embracing the community of professionals means that I can find friends online, I can go to workshops and conferences, I can organize, as you can see, conferences for others and for their children, for their students. So today I came here to share with you my personal theory of commandments of good teaching. And I would like to leave you with a question: what are your commandments?